Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Wall Street Skinny. I'm Jen.
I'm Kristen.
And we are two lifelong friends, former investment bankers, and teachers here to give you the skinny on how to land and thrive in the world's highest paying careers. So before we get into it today, we just finished up an awesome 3-day stint together. That was so much fun. Kristen, thank you so much for hosting me, by the way. You were a wonderful hostess in your beautiful home. Now you're like deathly ill.
Thanks for risking your life and possibly getting the plague. As you can tell, I messaged Jen on Tuesday when she was coming. I was like, I can't tell if I'm just really run down because I had people over on Friday, and then I went to New York for like a bachelorette weekend thing on Saturday. I came back Sunday, had relatives over, and then like we've been working, nonstop to get this course done. I was like, I think I'm getting sick. I feel like I've been hit by a truck.
I knew what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. But actually, one of the coolest parts, for me at least, of the visit was when one of our listeners actually recognized us when we were out and about. So Emily, if you're listening, I don't know what your last name is, but it was so wonderful meeting you. And we've never felt like celebrities before. And let's be clear, we are not celebrities, but thank you for making us feel special. And actually it makes me think, Kristen, because one of the things that I saw the other day that I thought was so cute, our favorite celebrity couple, and I'm speaking for you. I don't know if this is your favorite celebrity couple.
Duh.
It's like a weird thing to say too, though, because why do we have favorite celebrity couples?
Because
they're just normal people, and it's good that we have feelings about that.
No. Yes and no. I do think that for you and me, Buffy was such a big part of our childhood that. Oh, yeah. I was going to say, yeah. Yes. Yes, of course I do.
So Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr., who, for those of you who don't know, like Kristen said, Sarah Michelle Gellar was the star of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was our favorite show as kids. Yeah. I've rewatched it multiple times as an adult. Yeah, it's one of the best shows ever. And Freddie Prinze Jr. was the star of a lot of the teen movies that were very popular when we were growing up. Yeah, exactly. So they got married to each other. And I just feel this happy nostalgia whenever I think of them. Anyway, so apparently they just celebrated their 22-year wedding anniversary, which is an incredible feat for anyone, okay, but especially in Hollywood. And it got me thinking because, at the same time, we're seeing these very sad headlines about Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck breaking up for the second time, right? We were kids when they went through the first iteration. And I'm reading about the real estate portfolio that they're divvying up because apparently they didn't have a prenup when I got married.
J-Lo and Ben Affleck did not have a prenup?
Apparently they didn't have a prenup when they got married this time. That's what I heard.
This is shocking, actually. I guess they both were we each have so much money that we don't need one, but
So when I think of prenups, these are the people I think of them for, right? Either the extremely wealthy movie stars or the hedge fund founder crowd. And we get asked all the time for relationship advice on our social media account, which is very sweet of you guys, but also hilarious because we are by no means experts in anything when it comes to relationships or matters of the heart. But when you think about it, finance and love are very deeply intertwined across a number of different fronts. And so today we're sitting down with a woman named Libby Leffler, who is an amazing tech founder powerhouse. She worked at Google and Meta and SoFi and Compass, and she recently founded a tech company called First. And First sits at this really cool kind of unique intersection between tech and finance and relationships. So what First is doing, and Libby explains it better than I can here, but what they're trying to do is revolutionize the way that prenups are positioned and accessed so that they're not only for the rich and famous, but they're available to everyday people. And if you tuned into episode, I think it was 86 of our podcast where we interviewed Carrie Finley. Yes, exactly. So she runs a private credit fund. And we started talking a little bit about prenups in that conversation because she insists that every one of her employees gets one to determine what happens to the carry that they have in the fund. If you guys haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen. It's an awesome one.
And it is 86. I just double checked.
So First builds on that and operates on the premise that kind of a healthy and fun conversation about money should be at the foundation of every strong relationship, which I think, by the way, is a no-brainer, right? Like everyone can agree on that. But it's so much easier said than done. So what First has done, they've gone out and developed a streamlined flat fee platform that lets couples get a highly enforceable contract for a fraction of what you'd normally pay if you went out and hired some random lawyer on your own. So Libby's going to explain all of how it works, but what we're really going to get into here is Libby's story about being a tech founder, a mom. We're going to talk about the good and bad of prenups because, like we said, they're kind of a divisive topic. Mm-hmm. And I think the most important thing we're going to talk about is the question of not only why more millennials and why young women are getting more prenups than ever before, but about how we frame the conversation about money within our relationships, because the two are, like I said, so deeply intertwined. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's get into it.
Awesome.
All right, so we are joined here today by Libby Leffler, the CEO and founder of a company called First. And Libby, you are one of our very first, if not the first, tech founders that we've actually gotten to speak to.
Oh, cool.
And we're so excited to talk to you about the overlap between tech, finance, and kind of just like life and lifestyle, especially through the lens of your company. And we're going to get into what it is that you guys do. But before we do, could you please just share our background? Because I really think that your path is such an interesting one for our listeners who hear a lot about like, well, I started in investment banking and then I went to private equity. It was really unique. Like, I'd love to hear about your path educationally and career-wise to kick us off.
Okay. All right. Well, it's so great to be on and really happy to talk about the journey and just to be here with you too. I admire your paths and kind of what you're doing so much, and I'm such a fan. So thanks for having me on the pod. Where to begin? I'm from California. I went to Berkeley undergrad, which was awesome. You can kind of explore whatever you want to explore. I was a business major undergrad, and everyone in my business major was going to work in A, B, or C, accounting, banking, or consulting.
Yep.
I never really felt like I fit into A, B, or C. And that's kind of hard when you're in a small major in a big university setting and it's recruiting time and everyone's studying for cases and you're kind of thinking, where am I going to go? Being in the Bay Area, and at that time, Google was the big tech company, right? It had gone public a few years prior.
Yep.
It was like a really exciting thing. And so I really had my sights set on what I now know, but didn't know then, right? Consumer technology. And really like scalable companies that just had massive global scale. And so went to go work at Google in operations and sales.
Like, what does that mean? What were you actually doing? Because as non-tech people, I'm like, to whom are you selling? And like, what are you operating? I have no idea what that means.
Oh my gosh, what are you operating? That's a great question. So when you look at operations and sales inside of a technology company, it can be a number of things. For example, when I left Google and went to go work at Facebook, I worked on Facebook's first sales team, calling up advertisers at this time, asking them if they would like to advertise on Facebook. Right.
And so like, that's not a thing. Like, nobody knows how to do it.
When I talk to people now about having worked at Facebook or Meta, people are like, oh, that's like a huge company. Okay, well, at that time, it really wasn't a huge company. And like you, I was in college when the Facebook came to Berkeley. I'll never forget it. I was taking an intro to computer science class. I was sitting in a seminar. The woman next to me like elbows me and is like, hey, have you heard of the Facebook? Like, here, you got to join. And I joined. And within 24 hours, like everyone I knew was talking about it and had joined. And like, it was a defining thing, I would say, of the last 2 years of my college. It was like, you'd go out, come home, plug your camera in. Okay. Yeah. And like upload your photos and change your profile pic. And so to answer your question, Jen, like jumped in to an ad sales team, had no formal sales training, had never sold an ad on Facebook in my life, but was like, this company is going to be huge.
Yeah.
Like literally we would make lists of prospects who would be a great advertiser on Facebook at that time. And that's kind of what I worked on. And I was there for about 7 years and did a bunch of different roles, and including partnerships and business development at the end. I worked with nonprofits to bring nonprofits onto Facebook. And then, from there, made the leap to go to business school And so
And then why
it
did
was a
you
long
exit to go
journey
to business school other than like, I mean,
experience. I
people
had
go
a
to
lot of
business
fun.
school to get a better job. Like, what's better than your job at
Yeah.
Meta? I'm
Look,
rewriting history.
I grew up in Northern California. I went to
Mm-hmm.
Berkeley. I worked in Silicon Valley. I'd spent almost 10 years, a couple years at Google, a little less than that. Went to Facebook, spent 7 years there. And I looked around. There were times that I looked around at whether it was at investors in the Valley, whether it was people on boards that I really admired, whether it was people running big businesses at Facebook, right? Or like even the leaders of organizations I worked in. And I looked around and they all had MBAs from the top
Elite institutions. Yeah.
institutions. And so I thought there must be something that these people know that I don't know. And when I just did the calculus on it, I was like, I'm going to meet people, be exposed to people I'll never have probably the chance to connect with. Was the goal to go and like get the better job? I don't know. Like I've always been really hardworking, right? Don't follow the ABCs, like willing
Mm-hmm.
to jump out and kind of do something different. And so I was never really worried about that piece of it, but I was more like, hey, I'm ready for like a new experience, living somewhere new, that learning, that academic environment. But I never took my finger off the pulse of technology. Between my first and second years of business school, I
Mm-hmm.
worked in consumer investing. And then after business school, came back to the Bay Area, which is when I jumped in as an executive at SoFi and then later at Compass. So after this first half of my career at
Mm-hmm.
Google and Facebook and seeing how technology can change things and the speed with which we connect and can connect to businesses and things we care about, I jumped in at SoFi. I had an incredible mentor who had called me and was like, hey, what are your plans after business school? And I knew of SoFi because SoFi, right? Everyone in business school is, if you have a business school loan or a
Uh-huh.
graduate school loan, you're probably refinancing your loan with SoFi. So I knew the company, the brand, and really had a chance to dive in and focus on developing a totally different muscle and part of my career. And that's really, I think, what got me thinking in a more entrepreneurial way, even
Mm-hmm.
inside a bigger company. Like when you think about SoFi now, public company, big stadium, huge presence on television and marketing everywhere, still, doing really well when I joined as a company, but not a gigantic company, did not have a gigantic stadium, was a much smaller company. And so it's amazing to like jump into something, be able to be part of that growth, form really great relationships, really deep relationships with people, kind of working side by side with one another. And that's really what that journey looked like after business
Mm-hmm.
school.
Very cool. And then how did you make the jump from all of these other businesses to then starting first?
Yeah, so thank you. So it is a jump.
Yeah.
And that's one of the questions people ask me, right? Is you had this path. And then again, people look at the Facebook thing and they go, oh, well, Meta's a huge company. Okay, it wasn't a huge company then. Obviously, when I was there, it went public and had become a very big, globally influential company. When I first started working there and left Google to go work at Facebook, people were like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you leave Google to go? Truly, people asked me that, or what's Facebook, or what's the
Yeah.
Facebook? So for me, I think I had the privilege of jumping into these companies that really became these generation defining rocket ship companies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to get swept away in that journey and to go, wow, I'm getting more responsibility, more learning. There's just more. There's always more growth and learning. And if you're looking for that at those types of places, you will find that. Along the way, I always have been entrepreneurial, even inside of these companies and even inside of this broader journey. So I was always looking for like new teams to start, insights that can inform some new product we want to build. I joined Compass. We took Compass public in early 2021. And at the end of that journey, I sort of looked around and thought, well, I've always wondered what it would be like to start a company.
Mm-hmm.
I've always tried to start things inside of other companies. This is probably the time. That was a tough decision. It's a decision I think you really have to make. If you have a family, you have
Mm-hmm.
to make that also with your partner and your family, like really on board and like supportive of that journey, because it's a tough journey. It's just different than doing something where the strategy, the vision is defined, the mission is defined, the people you work with are defined. This is like 0 to 1, running around talking to people about how do we do this? How do I recruit people on this mission? How do I inspire people? How do we get the company going? How do we write all the marketing? What are the value props? Interviewing customers. You know this from what you're building. I loved being in all the different seats I was in at these different tech companies and thought, well, if there was ever a time to do this, probably now is the time, and just stayed really resolute on that. The other piece of it is the SoFi experience, the Compass experience really informed what we're building at first, right? Which is this sort of next gen digital legal ally for consumers. And when I thought about the SoFi experience, like when in your life would you ever be able to, before SoFi, refinance a gigantic student loan online, get a rate, get it funded without having to drag like documents, a banker's box of stuff into your bank? Like that idea that millennials, digital natives, that's what we're craving, we're looking for. We are used to that experience online. And really thinking about what are other areas where I felt like I wanted that guidance. I wanted that expertise. I wanted access to things that seemed to be good and savvy tools, but are really like time consuming, expensive, inefficient. And how do we fix that? And that's really how First was born, because we want everyone to sort of start with this first to build the foundation for what the future looks like for them from a legal standpoint and from a next gen sort of digital legal ally perspective.
Okay, so summing up First's business model in a sentence or two here. My understanding is, and I'd love it if you could correct any misconceptions that I have. Basically, what you've done is tried to make the process of getting a prenup something akin to going to the dentist, something that's super routine, easily accessible, affordable, not an intimidating process that is just another piece of the puzzle when you're thinking about planning a life together.
Okay, you got it.
That was like otherwise prohibitively expensive and time consuming, right?
So you nailed it. Our first agreement is a prenuptial agreement, the first consumer agreement that we do. Right now we're in California, rapidly expanding to other states. You know, we're the elite prenup for the modern couple. We exist to help people craft sound, efficient, cost-effective legal agreements online, right? You can do this. I mean, with us, you can get a draft agreement in a day. I would challenge anyone, like, call around to see if you can get a lawyer to do a draft for you in a day. It would be very, very hard.
No, you get like LegalZoom. You can't, no, that doesn't exist. You can't even get a lawyer to pick up the phone after a day.
Well, the thing that we do that's different is we really believe the lawyer is super important to this experience. Okay. We have people that come in and they're like, I want to do this. Like, why can't I do this the same way I order groceries and those show up at my doorstep? Or that I go and like refi my student loans and I can do it and it's funded in 2 days or whatever. We make it possible to get a legit lawyer drafted and reviewed prenup efficiently. And we really want to make that process fun, not adversarial. As fun as it can be, I guess. Right? I mean, it's like we don't we're not, you know, this is not like on the side you're like playing a video game, but it's like, how do we keep the process one where it's clear, you're answering these questions, you can get through it, and we're really breaking through the legalese to speak in like plain English to people.
And one question, what made you so passionate about trying to democratize access to prenups? I'd love if you could share your story as to like what actually got you interested in this particular part of the tech space.
This niche. Yeah.
This niche, this niche.
I've always been really interested in the connection between, and you two will appreciate this given what you do and what you're building, people, consumers, and money. How do we talk about money? Why don't we talk about money? At SoFi, the people who are customers there, we called them members. And so we did a lot of work with members around like career negotiation, getting raises, asking for raises. And so it really sparked a question for me around like, why is it hard to talk about money? Why don't we talk more about this? And if you look at sort of the data on this, like money is the top or among the top reasons that relationships do not fail. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
no,
thought they failed
100%. People don't
and
see eye
everything.
to eye. They don't have tough conversations early on, and they never get easier. Whatever financial problems you have going into a relationship
That's right.
don't magically get better when you have kids, buy a house, get a car, like lose your job. Like, they don't get easier with
Yeah.
time.
No,
It's like you're
absolutely.
fighting. Let's have a baby, right? It's like you have like issues with money ahead of time. Like, let's get married. Like, that seems like a good plan. Like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
let's talk about it
And then,
first. Yeah.
I mean, if you start looking at like general trends, right? So the family law industry is a big industry. It's big.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start looking at trends over time and like what's happening there. When I was looking at the data around it, prenup and the organic growth of prenup, like some of the most recent data on prenup adoption in the United States, like 47% of millennials surveyed, engaged or married, say that they have some form of prenuptial agreement
Wow.
or that they
What?
will be getting one. And that's like Harris
Interesting.
poll data from last September. Now, what does that tell us? Is there some like breakdown of this stigma of who prenuptial agreements are for? Is there some reason that people are more open to adopting this type of agreement? That's really what drove me to go, okay, there's something here. And then talking to people about, hey, did you get a prenup? And like interviewing people about, did you do it? Why didn't you do it if you didn't do it? Oh, you got divorced. Tell me about that process. Oh, you didn't get one and got divorced. What happened there? And the interviews were wild, and we happen to have some folks in common that like the people that got married, it's the whirlwind, the magical thing, everything's great, they're both doing amazingly, and something happens and now they're splitting up, and oh wow, the person that they were married to, they've now ended up in some very contentious thing that dragged on for a really long time. That's really tough, right? This could have helped with that.
Yeah.
The second call that I did with a few people that I was trying to recruit who are on our team, someone's like, oh yeah, we did a prenup. I loved doing it. I loved my prenup. I'm like, wait, what? She's like, I loved my prenup. It was so great. Like pulls her husband into the call. Oh yeah, we tell everyone to do it. We tell all of our friends. We tell them at every dinner party.
Like, honey,
And they were
remember
just,
when?
no, literally. And she's like, she's like, it's like, was our love letter on our anniversary. We go away and we like review it. And I'm like, okay. I almost was like, am I being punked?
Yeah.
So funny.
I mean,
But the
that's a
point,
bit much, but yeah.
that's like next level, right, on the spectrum.
Yeah.
But in general, it really sparked the question of how can we create something that is a delightful experience for people where they can come in, they can do it. It's understandable, it's clear,
Yeah.
it's step by step. We're guiding you through the process, and we've come in and like created a platform. We're not a law firm. I'm not a lawyer. We work with lawyers. Our customers engage with lawyers. We do not give legal advice. I'm not giving legal advice on this podcast. Like we exist as a platform to help people find great, vetted lawyers to help take them through that process of getting the smoothest, fastest, most cost efficient agreement possible. And that's really why First exists.
This may be just a total gap in my knowledge, but I think it's a question that a lot of our listeners may have. What is the actual purpose of a prenuptial agreement? Because I think there's a lot of misconceptions around this, and I am personally a holder of some of those misconceptions. When my husband and I first got engaged, I was like, I want a prenup. And he was like, wait, why? Like, what? And I was like, well, I don't know. You have a lot of debt. Like, that seems like something I don't want. And he was like, well, isn't that provided for like in the law? And like, no, screw this. We're not doing this. It's going to cost more to get a lawyer. I'm over this. And I was like, yeah, okay. It sounds like a lot of effort. Didn't really think twice about it. So I didn't know what a prenup was, thought I wanted one, never pursued it, never really thought about it again until I observed close friends going through the process where it ended up being extremely adversarial. And the goal of those prenups seemed to be to provide for something that wasn't already provided for in the law. So I'm really curious, like, who is a prenup for among the 40%, 7% of millennials who want one? Why do they want one? And what purpose is it serving?
So in that question, you brought up one of the main reasons that we have people come to us. When you get married, if you do not have a prenuptial agreement, you have an agreement on how your finances are treated. It's just the agreement that the laws in your particular state tell you how your finances will be treated once you are married and once you enter into marriage together. So in the sort of narrative on who a prenup is for, not so much now, but say years ago, there's a real like trope or persona that people think of when you think about a prenuptial agreement, like who's getting a prenup.
Yes.
Okay, today the data is pretty clear, and like we hear anecdotally as well, and women are a big driver of prenuptial agreements. Okay, a major driver. In fact, in a study of US attorneys who do marital law, they indicated a 46% increase in the number of women initiating prenups. Okay, well, that's different, right? Than I think what you would think of 5 years
Oh, I
ago,
always
10
thought of
years
like the rich guy who's on wife number 4, who's got endless alimony and child support
ago.
payments to whatever. And
Yeah, yeah.
listen, that may or may not be true, but guess what? My mom was a divorce lawyer. Like, there's some truth to that. Like, this does not exist in a vacuum.
So this type of agreement is for someone who wants clarity and control over how they want their finances to be treated. So even if you're like, hey, I'm totally aligned with how the state of California would like, the community property laws in this state. Well, maybe you would like to be able to say and to reiterate, this is how we want our finances to be treated. Many, if not most of our customers come in, they do have student loans. And so often that's a big driver of a prenuptial agreement. Perhaps those couples come in and they say, I don't have a lot of assets, but my partner comes in with student loans. I really want to be clear and sure that those are separate, right? And those are accounted for separately, and get some guidance from someone on what do I need to do to make sure that those are held separately in the event that we don't move forward. One of the other big trends that we're seeing is people with pets, people who own pets.
I am
Pets
not
are
surprised one bit.
like, we often take calls with customers. They can set up, free consultation calls with us right on our website, thisfirst.com. And, when I talk to folks, and I do like most of these calls, people will show up with their pet to the call.
Goodness.
And they're like, this is our baby. This is our pet. And we want to talk about if we need to rehome, like what's the terms of that? Like stuff very serious, like bringing their pet like onto the call. We have people that come in, they're like, hey, I don't have regular cash flow. I don't have a ton of cash. I don't have assets. I have like IP, right? I have music and things I've written and things that I'm like monetizing. I have NFTs. I have different types of assets. All of those use cases point to this can be for anyone. They're thinking about it. They want it. They go talk to a lawyer. The retainer blows people away, right? And they're thinking, oh my gosh, I have to do this upfront thing. Oh, and then my partner has to find a lawyer too. And they come to us and it's all kind of like tied with a bow and it's easy peasy and they get it done. And that's why we exist.
So one of the things that I think is so interesting about the subject of prenups is that I do think it can be almost unintentionally a very divisive topic. I think that people can feel very emotional about it or very passionate about it just in principle alone. But when we're talking about finance, whether you decide to invest your money in a specific market or not, if you don't invest your money, you're implicitly making an investment decision because you're foregoing certain types of upside. If I put my money under my mattress, like Kristen always jokes about, Kristen's always afraid, like, oh, the house is going to burn down. I'm going to jinx myself. Or like, if I put it in a savings account and it's not earning any interest, I'm implicitly making an investment decision. And I think we hit on something in our conversation that's so interesting, that if you don't get a prenup, you are implicitly agreeing to whatever the law is in place that's going to govern whatever happens if, God forbid, you do get divorced. You're saying, okay, whatever that law is, I'm good with it, and I have to just hope and trust that it's adjudicated in a way that sits right with me. And it begs the question, well, first of all, do you know what that law is? Because I will tell you, I have no idea what the actual law is, either in the state of New York where I lived when I was married, in the state of Florida where I got married, or in the state of North Carolina, other than I happen to know it's a 1 to buy, 2 to sell state because I'm a real estate agent, right? So that's all I know. And I think that it's really, you talk so much about the effectiveness of this platform in terms of delivering the service to people who want it. But I think it naturally begs the question, who wants it? And I think as educated women and men, this is a really important piece of the puzzle that we're not always necessarily getting ourselves up to speed on is, well, what are the rules if you do nothing? What are you
And by the
implicitly
way-
agreeing to?
Right.
And by the way, if you're planning on having a baby, like you probably want to know a little bit about what the laws are in case something goes wrong. And it's like the same thing where in a perfect world, nothing ever goes wrong.
Right.
In the real world, things do.
Yeah.
And that can
this
happen
is
with a baby, that can happen with a marriage. And so knowing the law in where you're getting married and like how that's going to potentially impact your life if something does go wrong, it just seems so important.
You can never predict what's going to happen. There's never a perfect time. People should be able to get educated along the way on like very common questions. We know what the questions are, so we can share proactively that type of education with people, right? The question of what is community property? What is spousal support? What does that mean if I decide to waive spousal support? Do people do that? Is that a thing people do? Like, we are able to provide that type of information to people, and we just do it in the process and in the flow so that they have the context that they need to like make the decisions that are right for them. I think the analog to investing is really important, right? You have money. If you choose not to invest it, choose not to put it in a high yield interest earning account. Again, this is not investment advice, but it's like if you choose to do nothing, you want to stick it under your mattress or stick it in a savings account, it's not earning anything, you are making an investment decision.
Yes.
You are making a decision. You are making a decision about the risk you're willing to take, right? Because you think it's no risk. It's actually not.
The riskiest thing you can do.
Risky,
Are you
right?
over the FDIC insured limit?
Right.
Like, yeah, Kristen's really nervous about fires and floods. She's
I get it.
This was
And
Well-
I'm nervous about earthquakes. I'm in the Bay Area. I'm nervous about earthquakes. We're nervous about fires
and hurricanes
fires and
and
floods, hurricanes.
Yeah.
But there's a pretty wide spectrum between, like, from a risk appetite standpoint of,
Yeah.
I'm doing nothing with, I have cash and I'm doing nothing with it. Right. And that's a decision. That's an investment decision that you've made. Or I'm like investing it all in one name and I'm like putting it all on red. It's like, okay, that's like that. Those are two that's wide ends of the spectrum. And
by the way, when you get married, you are putting it all on one name. Like,
well, yeah, right.
You are risking yourself up. So why would you not educate yourself and de-risk yourself as much as possible?
So that's where we come from, right? It's like, because to answer your question, like, who wants this? It's like, there's lots of people that want it. Now, whether they have,
or they don't know they want it,
or
because
they don't know
they don't think about it from this framework of what am I implicitly agreeing to?
Yeah. I think that one of the other reasons that is a lot of the times the reason that people ask for a prenup historically is that you have someone who has a lot of money who then the person that doesn't have as much money is like, okay, like I'm now going to be worse off by
power
signing
differential.
this thing. If
like
there's power differential, and
yeah.
if I do sign this prenup, like I will be worse off if something goes wrong. Whereas like if you're going into it from the perspective of, I want to make sure that I'm not worse off, you know, it's more of an empowering decision versus like a passive shit. I'm going to be signing something that's going to give up some of the rights that I might have had. Here it's like, no, like let's actually make sure that you have them. It's a different way of looking at it when you go into the process.
We have built first for either the people that know they want it and they want to do it because they want to do it online. They're used to doing things online. It's faster, smoother, simpler, seamless. It's more cost efficient. It's more efficient more broadly for them to do it. And, you know, perhaps they're like, hey, I kind of want to go somewhere where it's one and done, right? It's all baked in for me. I don't have to go out and do all of the research on my lawyer, now your lawyer. I mean, from where we built kind of our end-to-end experience, we want this to be the difference between like having to go and become your own lawyer and like figure out everything on your own, which is really no one is going to do that, right? There's a reason why people go to law school and take the bar and study. And the other piece of it is, you know, depending upon the circumstances, if you end up with lawyers exploring a separation or a divorce, there are going to be things inevitably that come up that you just did not anticipate, because it's impossible for any of us to know the exhaustive ramifications of going into what is a serious legal and financial relationship with another person beyond just the wedding. People spend hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars planning their weddings. When we talk to people, often they're like, yeah, we don't like really talk about money. We'll just figure it'll like work out. Well, money is one of the most important things to talk about. So we believe that like this path and process with first, and that's why it's called first, like we want this to be the first agreement that you have. It should be uplifting. It should be something that feels modern and not adversarial, but
Yeah.
foundational. That it's really building the foundation of your relationship because you're in it together. And even if you're like, hey, we really want everything to look like exactly like our state says it should look, that's how we want it to be. Okay, great. Then you have an agreement that you've both entered into that says it's going to be exactly what your state says it's going to be.
That's so cool. I was going to say, it seems like one of the other benefits is literally just learning what the laws are in your state. Because I imagine, and I know you guys are currently in California right now, but I do think that a lot of people probably, and I have no idea what the actual rules are. And they vary state by state. Like every
Is it the state where you live? The state where you got married?
That's a good question too. Yeah.
Is the state where you have your primary residence?
So the state by state sort of education piece really matters. And what we do inside of our platform is we educate people. Like when we use terms, like if you came across the word alimony, in our platform, you would see probably a little like an information button or a hyperlink to take you to learn, like, what is that word, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to break down the barriers that stand between people, like really understanding, hey, what is this question I'm answering? And what is this decision I have to make? And why do I care? And why does it matter? By informing and educating along the way of like, what does your state say about this? What is community property? What is separate property? What are the definitions of those things? And what does it mean if I decide that something's separate and then I'm using community property or funds that we've earned after we're married in a joint account to like pay for that separate thing? Then what happens? And so the agreement that we create on our platform is truly custom to the person. This is not like download a PDF and like put in a bunch of stuff. I did speak to, in one of my customer interviews, I talked to someone, they happened to be a venture investor, but not someone who, I was pitching in any way or who had invested in our company. They do a totally different type of technology. But the person was like, so I went online, got a PDF form prenup, downloaded it, put a bunch of stuff in that was not legal. Ended up getting divorced. Got to divorce court, and the judge threw the prenup out.
Yeah, this sounds like something I would do. I'd be like, I found it on LegalZoom and I drew it in, and this is legally binding, right? Like that's 100%.
This is why we think, and we've worked with amazing family law attorneys with incredible experience from the beginning. The lawyer is really important here to having something that educates along the way, tells you what your state provides for and what it doesn't, and what you can do in your state and what you can't do. And the difference between what we do and in a traditional process is, okay, so like if you have a lawyer and you've engaged a lawyer, as you know, on the business side of the world, like when you have to call your lawyer, you call your lawyer. Okay, then like you get a bill for that later.
Sorry, I'm laughing. We had a lawyer who charged us $80 for every email, and he would send us all these emails, and we'd be like, please stop emailing us. And he'd be like, here's another bill for $800.
We were traumatized.
And look, we're not your lawyer, but you engage with a lawyer. You have an attorney-client, a privileged relationship with that lawyer, and you can ask your lawyer, hey, my partner has indicated in here that they would like this thing. Is that a typical thing? And you're not asking us, you're asking your lawyer in confidential communication, but you can do that. And that's really important. And we believe that that's really at the heart of an agreement that's not only solid and legit, but really gets to that forcibility that a platform really shouldn't be guiding people on what most people do or what is right for your circumstance, but your personal relationship with an attorney that you've engaged can really enable you to kind of get to that answer.
So basically, if someone comes to you and is like, you need to sign this prenup, you say like, I'm going to go on first and we're going to do it together. And we can both discuss what the right, measures are and things to put into the prenup are for us together.
Right. What have you observed of your friends, like your friends that go out and get an agreement? What do they typically pay?
So what I've heard as far as, and again, it's not the broadest sample size and it's a New York centric sample size. So this may not apply given obviously you are in California right now, but I've heard along the lines of a low 5-figure retainer and then orders of magnitude above that in the kind of low to mid 5-figure range to get an executed prenup.
Yeah, so that's very consistent.
$50,000.
Yeah, that's very consistent with kind of what we hear from our customers when we come through and they find us. And first, I'll caveat this with price is not the only dimension upon which people make decisions about getting a prenuptial agreement. Like there are some people that come to us and they're like, I have embarked on this already. I cannot handle the like PDFs, the back and forth. I don't understand why I can't just do the questions and get a thing. And so that is why I'm here. My time is valuable and I want this to be simple, easy, go at my own pace, do it online, nothing to print, like whatever. There are people, of course, that are going to compare us to the traditional process of going to family law attorneys. You know, in California, you're represented with an attorney on each side. So each partner is going to have an attorney. Usually they come to us and say, hey, wow, this pricing between $10,000 and $50,000 to get this agreement. Yeah, we are, right? We're going to be in the 10% range of, you know, the median there to do this. How do we do this?
And how do you make money?
Yeah. For us, the initial big question is looking at the process, right? And really we just look for all of those points of inefficiency and created sort of a platform to solve for those, which is how you can do this lighter weight, faster, more cost effective than a process that, you know, might be more manual or cumbersome to collect information, transpose it over here, now create that draft from it, now give it back to the person, and you're passing things back and forth.
Got it.
That's very cool. I'm curious, why do you think that there has been this increase in women looking to initiate prenups?
There are more women in the workforce than ever before. Women are earning more. Women are increasingly the owners of single family homes in the United States. And women are going to uniquely benefit from this massive wealth transfer that's about to happen from their parents and from their grandparents. And so we, you know, often have people that will come in, they say something like, I know I have inheritance and I want to account for that here, or I've seen my parents get divorced and the outcome of that on my mother or on my father, and I want to be able to be thoughtful and responsible about it. I hope that it's largely driven by an expanded conversation that people are having about money, and that people are more comfortable talking about money, that it's more out there. I think things have just really changed in terms of people's access to being able to create different streams of wealth, and they're increasingly educated because of access to information about tools that can be helpful to them.
Now, I'm not asking you to give relationship advice, but I'm kind of asking
Oh
you
my
to
gosh,
give relationship
I'm not
advice.
giving relationship advice.
No, but hear me out. We
You
get
would be
asked all
shocked,
the
by the
time.
way. You would be shocked. To Jed's point, like how many
We
times
get
do you get
asked
asked for
all the
relationship
time. How'd you
advice?
guys meet your husbands? How do you manage this relationship like while you're working? How do you manage dating and finance? Blah, blah, blah.
I get it. Yeah.
And it's funny, like the way that we both met I mean, I literally, my husband and I worked together. Like we would both have been fired and burned on the stake and like salted the earth under current HR guidelines because it's just a very different world. But I do think that not only being on the same page about money very, very early on is critical to a successful relationship, but also having an understanding of how your partner makes and invests their money above and beyond just like, hey, they come home with a paycheck every day and they seem grumpy sometimes and they seem happy sometimes and I don't know why, right? I think that part of the key to both of the success of both of our relationships has been a shared understanding of what our partners do at like a very fundamental level. You happened to trade products that I understand, right? And I'm just curious, is there anything you've learned beyond having these conversations early, but anything else that you've gleaned about what does tend to lead to more successful conversations about money, aside from talking about a prenup or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, first, I will use my own personal experience, which is when I was first dating my now husband, very early on, he said to me, hey, I need to talk to you about something, you know, let me know when you like have some time to, and I was sort of like, oh my gosh, like you can't, are you breaking up? Like, it's like so early. Like, I don't even know.
Family? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't even like, so that's like how early it was that he said to me, hey, I really want to share something with you. So, you know, I have student loans and they're an important part of like knowing before we get further into this.
Yeah.
It's an important part of knowing me because this enables my career and it makes it possible for me to have my career. But this is something that you need to be aware of. Okay. I was blown away by that. Like that level of transparency really
Mm-hmm.
opened the door for us to have this conversation about, okay, like how are you thinking of managing those? And what's your plan for that? And how should I think about that in this context? And so, I mean, my husband's a very smart person, but I don't know if he understood how pivotal that was to really
Yeah.
opening the door for that conversation about, okay, like this is a productive conversation we can have. This is a healthy thing that we can have. Part of doing a prenuptial agreement, and in our platform, it literally says like one of the most important parts of creating an enforceable prenuptial agreement is full financial transparency. That is why you
Yes.
share information about your financial picture with us, because we share that. And when you do a prenuptial agreement, that is shared with your partner. I think that there are few conversations more important in both business and love than the
Mm-hmm.
conversation about money. But like that discussion about money is really, really hard. And like, have
Mm.
you ever, I guess the question is, have you ever had a money discussion that was easy? I don't know that I've ever had a money that was like easy, right?
Oh,
There's
it's such
always
a good question. Or I'd certainly be like stressed
like
about it,
stress,
right?
right?
Like,
You feel anxious, or is this something like if you're learning about money for the first time, am
or
I
annoyed,
or annoyed
or
or
like you feel like it's somehow asymmetrical even when it's not. I don't know. There's all these weird emotions
yeah.
about money, and I don't know why they're there.
And it's like there's a
This is like
trust
a therapy
dynamic.
session.
The most expensive mistakes we can make in life are in business and in love. So we, of course, I
Mm.
mean, I'm biased because we started first, right? But first is called first because it's the first step to the foundation of building a relationship together. And so we think a
Mm.
prenup is a really good idea, but there is that thing that holds people back, not from a prenuptial agreement, but from it's really about these like deeply held feelings about money. Now, the research on this, though, is super clear that when you're vulnerable with a partner, that leads to and breeds intimacy. You
Yes,
become closer to your partner by having that
yeah,
conversation.
I think that's 100% true.
In my view, this is
Yeah.
not relationship advice, but like the smartest people I know in business and the people I look at that have, what appear to be very successful relationships have all said the same thing, which is like, hey, we have respectful conversations with each other about what our goals are, how our goals are changing, how we think about money, how we spend money. And, we ask a lot of those questions in the process of creating this agreement together.
What's so interesting is I feel like so my husband and I, we both grew up Catholic, and one of the things when you like get married, you have to do this thing called pre-cana. And for people who don't know what pre-cana is, it's almost like a class you have to go to, but there's like a lot of talking, and you like talk to your partner and you talk about like but anyway. But it seems like as people are becoming less religious, it almost feels like having this where you can like talk to each other about these big important things ahead of getting married. It almost feels like it's like kind of filling in the gap where there was maybe some of these institutions or whatever norms in place in like a different realm, and now it's starting to fill that space that is no longer as commonplace
Well,
anymore.
yeah, you
I
meet
don't
your
know. I
partner
just
on an app online now, right? You meet them on
yeah.
Hinge or
Yeah.
Bumble. You communicate through text, and then
Mm-hmm.
you get your pre-cana or your prenup through this platform, right? Like everything's now a UI that has just made it easier to do things that we used to have to
But
do in
I
the analog world.
Pre-Cana was it came up a lot as we were talking to
interesting.
folks. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that you raised that. It came up often. And we
That's so
looked at a lot
interesting.
of different processes or like premarital sort of coaching, counseling, like things that people go
Mm-hmm.
through to sort of inspire like how we ask these questions in the
Mm-hmm.
right way so that people
Yeah.
don't feel put off by them and that it doesn't feel adversarial or confrontational, but that it feels really productive. And I'm really going to date myself here, but I did also meet my partner online, but on Tinder a very,
Oh.
very long time ago. So you're like Bumble and
Oh.
Hinge. Like that's not
No,
even
my
an
best
option
friends.
anymore. That's how long ago it was.
That's
No, no,
amazing.
no. I mean, my both of my brother and my husband's sister both met their partners online. Like, I feel like nobody meets in the real world anymore. It's all online now these days. But
And that's who comes to us, right? Like if you can meet your
Sure.
partner and facilitate that real
That's
life
exactly right.
partnership online,
mm-hmm.
if you can talk to your physician online. Like who would have thought that
Your
like
therapist,
your
like
therapist
everything.
online, you can do this online. It just begs this question, like, why can't there be a platform that helps facilitate this? And so that's what we're really excited about, is really this opportunity for the modern couple that wants to do something that feels really seamless and simple, and bring it kind of to where they are and meet them where they are and facilitate this discussion that feels more like a conversation than a confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
in the study of consumer behavior, researchers actually call this temptation bundling. It's sort of like pairing your
Ooh.
workout. Like if you ever go work out and you do it with a show that you love to watch. Like I do it, I say this for my best shows. Like I'm like, oh, Bridgerton. Okay, I'm gonna go. Now I'm gonna like really get my workout in, or like it's like you only get to do something you're really looking forward to that's really fun when you're also doing something where you're learning, building, growing. In this case, it's working out. So when you're doing this with First, you're working on these money conversations, you're working on breaking down those barriers. And as part of that, you're also getting into this enjoyable, intimate mode with your partner, getting on the same page as you take the next step. And so that's really kind of the formula that we think is really powerful in terms of getting people in that sort of space to have the really productive conversation. And by doing that, you're making your relationship better. You're enhancing the foundation of your relationship.
Okay, so Libby, one thing we actually got to know about you as we were casually chatting is you are a new mom. It's funny because when Kristen and I started this little venture together, Kristen had an infant. And when we were first recording our podcast, she'd be like, oh, hang on, 5 more minutes. I'm still nursing or whatever, changing a diaper in the background.
Yeah.
But I cannot imagine starting a full-fledged tech company as a new mom. Can you talk to us about what that experience has been like? We get asked all the time by moms or women who are considering becoming moms on Wall Street about what our experience was like. And we're like, sorry, can't tell you. We both exited our Wall Street careers before we had our kids. But what is it like being a tech founder and being a new mom?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a new old mom. I'm a new, right? So I have 2 experiences of having children. I have 2 kids. So I have 2 experiences that are totally different of having kids while working in a career that I'm very engaged in, deeply passionate about. One of them is more of like a corporate tech experience in a pre-IPO company that went public the following year, but it was just much different, a much different experience, right? And so the one thing about that was like a hitch kind of is at the very end of that pregnancy, COVID happened. And so we were in the Bay Area, and we were, I think the first in the US, or among the first in the US that, went to full lockdown with like shelter at home. At the same time, I was running a business that had a retail footprint, like a physical retail footprint of almost 100 or maybe over 100 at that time, physical offices that we had to figure out. I was like 38 weeks pregnant. So that experience in itself was its own crazy thing. Running a business, what do you do? Everyone's freaked out. And how do you navigate through that? It's different than today. We're all in a home or different setting recording this podcast. At that time, I had never worked from home. I worked up until I took meetings, I think, that morning, and then, we ended up going to the hospital, and then I went on kind of a corporate maternity leave. Okay. Then fast forward 3.5 years, I had started First, and then we're having another baby, right? Doing a startup and working away at it, very heads down. It's like it takes all of your energy and time to do that, and all of your focus. And so really, really doing that to the point where at Facebook, there used to be this poster on the wall that was like, every day feels like a week.
That's the kind of poster I want on the wall of my office.
That's what it said. I could be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I think it's like every day is like a week or something, right? So around when I was like 30 weeks, I was like, wow, I probably need to like fill in my broader.
Well, you were having a baby. The company is your baby, right? You're like, I'm focused on getting this baby off to school, and then I'll work on the other one.
So then this other crazy thing happens. And the reason I'm sharing this is just for anyone listening. The TLDR in this is, I don't think there's ever a good time. There's never a perfect time to do anything. There's never a perfect time to like have the baby, get pregnant, take the promotion, leave the job. Like it's never, I don't know anyone who's like, oh yeah, I did that thing and it was the perfect time to do that.
Yep.
I know
Yeah.
more people who are like, I was laid off and it was shocking and I did not expect it from like my big
Yeah.
job. And it was the worst possible time. And I
Yeah.
owe my career now to that because it was a push I needed
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
to do the thing I'm really passionate about or to take this new opportunity or
Yeah.
whatever it was.
Yes.
So around 30 weeks, I remember I was like, okay, I really kind of need to like call some people, tell some people just so I don't want people to be like, wow, you just like popped up with a baby. Like that's like,
Surprise.
because you do want to like, yeah, you kind of want to, tell people that you're close to. I mean, it was like that level of real focus.
You were
And
like
then,
pulling a Paris Hilton.
I mean, we did the hard launch on Instagram and people were like, so you definitely did like a secret pregnancy.
Yeah.
People were like,
Yeah.
wait, what is happening? But that speaks to the fact that I didn't really see it. I was just working, just
Mhm.
Yeah.
really focused working. And then, when you have a little one, it's like the time that you aren't focused on what you're working on is family time. And that's really like the areas that we really were focused on. At 33 weeks, my dad died unexpectedly. So very unexpectedly, very
I'm so
sudden.
sorry.
So I showed up. I had not told very many people I was pregnant and like showed up to my dad's services. And someone was like, yeah, so you walked down the thing. And I remember you turned around and I like, they were like, I gasped because I was like, wait,
my God.
what? Like, it was just, so there's never a good time. And so I
Yeah.
was really grappling with and navigating and really truthfully I'm still navigating the grief of that and to lose someone. My dad was a really important part of my life. He really believed in me. He always encouraged me. He worked his whole life, was very self-made person. And so much of my career I really owe to those like lessons of kind of to stick with it and perseverance and leadership and all those things. So the lesson I think for me is like there's never a great time. If someone would have told me, hey, you're going to start a company and have a baby during it. Oh, and then your dad's going to die during it at the end of your pregnancy, right? And so now you're trying to navigate this. And I was just like, so what I tell people now, my job and the company that I started with the people that I work with saved me. Because
I love that.
For me, it was every day, like we have certain standing meetings every day. And, I come on and jump on with my team and we're solving challenges. We're talking to customers where I'm inspired by, the challenges in front of us, fixing things for people, getting things done. And every day it was an opportunity for me to connect with people that really care and are passionate about something and sort of move through this experience in a way that I felt very supported, but also that I could still be really productive and move forward. And, and the days that like I would hop off of a Zoom and like weep, there were days like that. And I had the space, to be able to do that. And it's hard when you don't have that space. But in many ways, it really saved me from I think we can get into these cycles of sort of dwelling on things or why did this happen or, the unanswered questions of like life and how things come to an end and my shifting reality. And so I never expected it. There's never a good time. If you're thinking of it, if you have an inkling, my whole thing is start. Just start, even if it's like 10 minutes a day, thinking about it, tinkering with it, putting some thoughts down on paper. It's like you're moving forward.
I love that so much. And I think, when I've gone through grief or loss in my own life, I think something you said really just resonated with me now, which is I could be solving this other problem. I could be investing this creativity. You can't solve the problem of grief, right? It never goes away. It just changes shape. But you can solve and you can provide creativity to other concrete things. And so if you're using your brain and using your emotions to contribute positively in some way, I do think that secretly in the background, that can oftentimes help you work through those other problems that aren't going to have a concrete solution. But it just chips away at that mountain. And I think it can be such a wonderful thing.
I think that it completely resonates with where I was and really like where I am in it. And look, you started off by asking about, like, I think you and Kristen can really relate to this, being a mom and what is that like doing this company and being a mom. And it is so rewarding. I love being a
Yeah.
mom. It's like the best. It's
Yeah.
the best
Yeah.
job. It's like the best job, my best promotion, the best job I've
Yeah.
ever gotten hired into. And I'm lucky that my little people, they didn't exactly hire me, but I hope they'll give me a great performance review. Like I am with them every day. Like they're the,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
am here in the morning. I see them. I'm happy to wake up ever earlier to like be the first person that they see in the morning and the person who tucks them in to bed and sort of helps them navigate all of the various things and is there for them. I also want to be able to demonstrate to my kids that, like, hey, if you want to give it a shot, you can have a full life. You can explore these different things. I don't believe in this idea of like, you can have it all or you can't have it all. It's like, yeah, like there,
Yeah.
I don't think there's balance in any of it. There's really not balance in any of it. There's some days that go really smoothly. There's other days that are a mess. I think there's a lot of things that people see online today and they're looking at it from the outside and they never really see. It's like everyone's highlight reel and no one really sees like the
Mm-hmm.
messy days, the days you just totally
Yeah.
melt down, the days your
Mm-hmm.
kids have a meltdown. When you go online and you see these things, whether it's you're like, okay, now I'm like doing amazingly as a parent. And like then you see someone else that and their career is just moving and grooving, right? And you're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm totally behind. Or like maybe you're having big wins at work and you're like, oh my gosh, but I totally screwed up. And like my kid did not eat like the right thing for dinner, or I didn't do this right thing. I don't think there's ever like a perfect day, a perfect way.
No.
I
Yeah.
just try to stay balanced in it. The one lesson I have really learned that I think is important for people to know is after I had my first kid, came back to work
Mm-hmm.
probably 3 or 4 months after. And there were two people in the same week that said to me, you never talk about the baby. And I was so taken aback by that feedback because I just assumed I came back, people have a lot going on in their lives. No one wants to hear about my kid, they're teething, I'm not sleeping, this is happening. And they were like, yeah, no, we really want to know about. They were
Oh.
like, you don't talk about your kid. I was like, oh my God, because I love my kid so much and we spend so much time together and there's so many things. But I guess I always showed up at work in
Mm-hmm.
every job I've ever had as like trying to be really just who I am, right? Not trying to show up this way or that way, but I very much was like, this is who I am. I want to develop real relationships with people. And I genuinely, I think I just didn't want to talk about myself. There was so much going on in the
Yeah.
world and in people's lives. And I felt
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
is this the right thing to talk about? It turns out people were kind of looking for these bright
Yeah.
spots and this like happy news and
Yeah.
things that made them feel like, okay, life, like babies are born, life moves on. Like every
Yeah.
day something new happens, a new life is here. You see things from
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
outside, or you see when you're a founder, you see people like, hey, they raised this big round. Like, how did that happen? How did that come together? It's never linear. Often when you talk to people, they're like, oh my gosh, I talked to 300 people. Everyone said no. Or we
Well,
had
Mm-hmm.
4 months of runway. We were literally cash out in 4 months and then this thing happened. Or
Yeah.
maybe it was this like massive success story, but they tried 7 companies beforehand and none of
yeah.
them worked.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this was the last one. Like everyone I know that has an interesting story, gave it a go, pushed themselves, encountered a stumbling block, figured out how to be resilient and like pick themselves back up and move forward through it. And that's really the story of, I think, this company. I also
Mm-hmm.
think about that lesson of like putting your oxygen mask on first, like
Hmm.
whatever that
Yeah.
oxygen is for you. For me, it happened to be pouring. And I don't know if this would be true if I were in a different stage of my career, but for
Hmm.
me, it was the oxygen mask was I've got a team of people. They're an awesome team of people. We're super committed to what we do. We love customers. We love digging in with customers and like helping them. And this is the thing every day that like makes me so excited to get up and
Yeah.
do what I'm doing, even in the face of like these challenging moments.
This has been honestly incredibly enlightening as someone who, again, I think prenups are kind of like part of the pop culture conversation, right? Like we were doing our review of Succession and going back and watching it, and I love like Marcia being like, "We're going to say some numbers. These numbers are going to sound crazy, but the more you think about these numbers, like the safer they're going to." And like that's kind of, again, it's been so deeply ingrained in my mind, not really understanding how the process works. You've kind of changed my whole thinking about the structure of it, and I'm really just excited about what you guys are doing, and
Thanks.
I think that, again, we're really excited to see what happens with First
Yeah.
and what you guys do. And if our followers want to, learn more and get in touch with you guys and see what you're up to, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. Thank you. First, thank you. It's so great to come on your pod. Such a fan personally, and it's been really fun talking about this. If you want to find us, you go to thisfirst.com. You can find us on Instagram at thisfirst. You can find us on TikTok at first. But come to our website, thisfirst.com. We do free consultations. If you're in California, you're looking for a prenuptial agreement, doesn't matter if you're getting married like in the very near term or next year or even beyond, or you don't have a date, that's okay. Set up a free consult and we're happy to do that. Or you can just come online if you're ready to go and get it done. So thisfirst.com.
Love it. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Libby.
Thank you.